We're privileged to have with us this morning the Surgeon General of the Army and the Commanding General of the U.S. Army Medical Command, Lieutenant General Scott Dingle, and his senior enlisted advisor, Command Sergeant Major Diamond Huff, who will provide some perspective on medical modernization. And as I said last year, if you missed that briefing, you're missing out, because what an energetic, passionate couple of leaders that are looking to the future. So General Dingle, over to you, sir.
Wow. Thanks, Tim, for that introduction.
Thanks for being here again, sir.
Excellent.
Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. Glad to be here.
First off, as the Army Surgeon General and as Command Sergeant Major Huff is the top medic in the Army, we would be remiss if we also did not stop and take time out to pay homage and recognition for the 9 soldiers from Charlie Company Dustoff, 101st Airborne Division, that lost their lives on the 29th of March. 3 flight medics, 4 warrant officer pilots, and 2 crew chief mechanics. So please join me with a quick moment of silence. Thank you. Go to the next slide. The loss of those 9 lives on the 29th of March bring to reality the seriousness, the lethalness, as well as the requirement to be prepared to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars. Go to the next slide. Simon Sinek wrote the book about finding your why, what is your purpose? Well, we know our purpose. And as we reflected on those 9 soldiers that lost their lives, it brings to reality the red that is on that slide. In this case, when we talk about the Army, deploy, fighting, winning wars with overwhelming lethality, the 29th of March was a reality of the profession of arms, of how we must train to be prepared as the world's most lethal army to win our nation's wars. But our purpose is clear. Next slide. And since 1775, next slide, our nation has fought our nation's wars. We have deployed, we have fought, but the one thing that has not changed is that we must clear the battlefield of our casualties, whether with horse or buggies, whether with train or rail, or whether in today's time using Army aviation assets, which is the preferred, most beneficial way to conserving life. The one thing that remains constant is that casualties will always be generated from combat. Next slide. Where Army aviation comes into play, the purpose and the why, build to the next slide, is that it is a combat multiplier that goes in where other people will not go in. Build to the next slide. The Charlie Company Dustoff will go in and get that casualty when no one else will get that casualty. That casualty will be evacuated out of a combat zone with a will that the chief talked about, a courage, those pilots to go in and get those casualties. But we also must remember that it's not always going to be medevac. We need casevac too. And that's the importance of our aviation units to ensure that they're training at our CTCs, casualty evacuation, how to not just clear in the current or the specific AOR, but when called upon, when we get into LISCO, to use assets to clear the casualties regardless of where they are at, being a combat multiplier. But the message has not changed. And I want to share with you the same video I shared with you last year, because the message does not change. The world's most lethal, powerful aviation force must have the world's greatest medical instrument of power to conserve its fighting strength. Let's run the video if we can get it to run.
He did 25 minutes. I'm gonna need the chair over here. Here we go, big pinch.
Gentlemen, listen up. We're going to get him on the helicopter pretty soon, so please, let's look at him from top to bottom and make sure he's ready.
Get you to Germany here within 24 hours, probably. All right.
Hey, Mom. I'm in the hospital. I don't know where the hell I am. I'm in a hospital somewhere. Yeah, I got hit by an IED today.
Okay. What's wrong? How are you?
I'm not too bad considering the way the vehicle looked.
Now what Mom said, Mom said okay to her son who just got hit with an IED. Keep running the video if you can. And now Mom would soon learn what an IED is. What you're looking at now are not actors. That's not moulage. It's not pretend. These are our soldiers, our sailors, our airmen and our Marines who answered the call, who trained in the profession of arms to be prepared to execute those missions, but yet paid a price. This is at the Center for the Intrepid at Joint Base San Antonio. Their lives being put back together again. After that IED that Mom said okay, that she didn't know what IED was. Our soldiers, adaptive sports therapy, the seen and the unseen wounds. Our wounded warriors competing, not just for a gold medal, but for life, stability, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, still smiling. And where would we be if we did not have the families still walking by the soldier's side? That soldier's life was saved by a combat medic. That soldier's life was saved by that dust-off pilot, crew, and medical team that went in and picked them off the battlefield. I was at a TBI conference in San Francisco, and a Marine got up to speak, and this particular Marine had received a sniper fire into the eye, and it came out the side of his head. So you can imagine the number of surgeries and procedures that this Marine had went through. And as we were at this traumatic brain injury conference, this Marine said, General Dingle, don't feel sorry for me. Because if it were not for a combat medic, my family would not be here and have me with them today. I may not be the Marine that I was before I went into combat, but it's because of Army medicine that my family has me here today. I submit to you, Quade, that if we did not have the Charlie Company dust-off medevac units and CAS-evac using aerial platforms, that Marine and many people like them would not have survived in combat. That's the importance of aviation as a combat multiplier in conserving the fighting strength. Command Sergeant Major, next slide.
First of all, I'm gonna start by saying, and I'm gonna speak for my entire CMF, but really I'm speaking for myself. Army medicine loves Army aviation. I'm gonna say that again. Army medicine loves Army aviation. We have a long history, a long partnership to do something that, to be quite frank, Army medicine is privileged to do. That's to save the lives of our nation's most precious assets. So if you start here and you look at the caption below, we understand and we are committed to zero preventable deaths. And we can't do that without teammates. We cannot do that without teammates. Whether it's the organic medic with the infantry squad that's flying on the back of the Chinooks to go do the attack, the assault, or it's the critical care paramedic that's on the medevac platform getting to the point of injury, or the medic on the ground calling in that 9 line and hearing that music of that rotor come in to grab that patient and save lives. We are teammates, and we have a long history of being great teammates. And Army Aviation plays their position like all-stars. And we in Army Medicine intend to be all-star teammates. So we know we have to get it right. And we have a methodology to get right. And it starts with this pyramid. What binds us all together is that we understand that we are part of an Army profession. That's our profession. Regardless of our AOC, MOFs, what we do, we are joined by that profession. We understand our values. We understand our commitment. From there, every one of us understand that we have to have survivability. We have to be able to survive on any battlefield that we find ourselves. And then after that, for us, Army Medicine, we want to be the best at medicating. We want to be the best at saving lives. We want to bring our partners home, and we can't do that without Army Aviation. So as we look to the future and we talk about the areas that's going to be denied, we talk about that the golden hour may be extended to the golden day. We know in Army Medicine, then our capability has to be improved with the baseline competencies of our medics that's on the ground, the people that's going to have to sustain those casualties longer. But I want to make this clear to the aviation community. We talk about prolonged casualty care, prolonged field care, and what the requirements are going to be. And I'll tell you, we are committed. The boss has told us we will not be left behind. We will continue to save lives. We will continue to conserve fighting strengths. So we're going to do our part. But I want everybody to know this. The number one rule of prolonged casualty care is to get out of prolonged casualty care. And that's where we take on our brave aviators that still get in there and be able to move these patients off the battlefield. So we're looking to continue our partnership. And as you continue to innovate, to have the right platforms and the courage to get in there and pull out those patients, we're going to be there right with you lockstep. Once we do those things, we continue to do our leader development, and we believe we will bring to the fight the most competent medics we've seen in the history of Army Medicine. Now, what does that look like? Quick visual depiction of when Army Aviation and Army Medicine come together. Please run video. Thank you. Next slide.
General Douglas MacArthur said it best. He said that no one desires peace more than the soldier, because it's he or she who must pay the greatest price when called upon. What we owe you in Army Medicine is that when you are called upon to deploy, fight, and win, whether if it's in close contact battle, or if it's distance battle, or if it's long range ballistic missiles, or wherever you are, it's imperative that we have that combat medic there to conserve your fighting strength. Question for you, Quad A. When the future vertical lift is implemented and modernization kicks in, and we're in the multi-domain battle environment, and LISCO is in full force, and we are in that theater of operation, and the long-range ballistic missiles start to come in on locations, and artillery starts to come in, and snipers, and casualties start to surmount, what is the first word that is yelled from the injured? Oh, you could do better than that. That was terrible.
Somebody over here got it.
I thought this was Quad A. I caught you off guard. Quad A. So let me try it again. So when casualties start to surmount, regardless of where it is on the battlefield, and the injured cries out, what's the first word that is cried out? That medic, even in LISCO, has to be able to move where the future vertical lift goes. We have to have the same capabilities so that we can clear the battlefield of God forbid, aviators whose aircraft is down, and we've implemented the casualty evacuation plan to get that casualty or that aviator team or that crew out. That medic has to be there to conserve the fighting strength. I'll say it again. The world's most lethal aviation force must have the world's greatest medical instrument of power, conserving your fighting strength. Whether it's reconstituting in teams by returning those aviators back to duty, or if it's clearing the battlefield, I'm going to need your help. Whether in LISCO, where Row 2 or 3 facilities are overwhelmed with casualties, and the medical evacuation, strategic evacuation cannot get them out, we're going to have to use standard and non-standard evacuation assets. Aviation units must incorporate into CTCs and your training casualty evacuation, not just for your own casualties and team members in that battalion and that aviation brigade and battalion, but we need it to clear the battlefield so that we can continue to fight and win the conflict. We need aviation support. We cannot do it. So please incorporate it into the combat training centers when you go in. What is that CASEVAC plan? We need you, because prolonged care is not going to be able to be successful unless we start allowing that medical team to take care of the next injured soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. Next slide. And as we modernize, we too must have the modernization information systems so that we can be combat multipliers to you. And then last slide, the question was asked, well, what are your requirements? What are your requirements? The requirements that we have in Army medicine, if you go to the last slide, is that we must empower, we must enable, we must be that instrument of power that is allowing the medical teams, the combat medic, to be responsive and to be relevant for when that cry medic goes out, regardless of where it is on a kinetic battlefield. That combat medic, what we owe you, is going to be responsive to the call. It's going to be relevant to sustaining life. And we are going to ensure that life, limb, and eyesight through the platform of aviation is going to be sustained. So Quad A, we thank you for your support of Army medicine. I thank you for your always continued of not leaving us behind. Because again, the world's greatest aviation force must have the world's greatest medical instrument of power. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You don't know that you're so passionate and so passionate about somebody that cares so much.
Thank you so much.
Both of you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tim.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I certainly feel more comfortable knowing that you have passionate leaders like that command team that are looking to the future and ways to preserve our fighting force and take care of our soldiers. Wow. Again, he volunteers to come talk to us because he wants to share that message. And I think it's a great credit to General Dingle. So, sir, you and Sergeant Major, thank you for being here. Okay.